The rain came down in torrents, hammering the pavement and bouncing off parked cars, the kind of storm that made most people rush home to safety. James Reynolds, a man who lived by the clock, hurried across the slick sidewalk, leather shoes splashing through shallow puddles. His phone buzzed again in his pocket, a reminder of the conference call he was already 15 minutes late for. Another deal. Another meeting. Another day where he was too busy to notice anything else. But tonight was different. Through the curtain of rain, something caught his eye. A small figure stood beneath the weak glow of a street lamp, trembling. James squinted, shielding his face with his briefcase as the storm lashed harder. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Soaked to the bone, her dress clung to her tiny frame, her shoes muddy and ruined. She held a stuffed bear against her chest like it was the only thing keeping her upright. For a moment, James froze, his breath catching in his throat. In his world, everything was scheduled, calculated, predictable. But this was raw, human, and unplanned. He hesitated, every instinct telling him to walk past, to leave this mystery to someone else. But something in her eyes stopped him cold. Even from across the street, he could see the fear, and something else. A loneliness that mirrored a part of himself he rarely let anyone see. He stepped closer, his expensive suit already ruined by the rain. His voice cracked through the storm. "Hey, are you all right?" The girl lifted her head slowly. Her lips trembled, but her voice was steady, heartbreakingly steady. "Mister, do you know where my mom went?" The words slammed into him harder than the rain. James felt the ground shift beneath him, as though everything he thought mattered suddenly didn't. He didn't know it yet, but in that instant, his life was about to change forever. If this moment already moved you, stay with us, because what happens next will break your heart, and then rebuild your faith. Her name was Lily, and long before she stood under that rain-soaked street lamp, life had already been far too heavy for her small shoulders. Her mother, Grace, worked 2 jobs, one cleaning offices late into the night, the other serving tables at a diner that barely kept the lights on at home. There was no father in the picture, no steady hand to lean on, just a mother doing her best and a little girl who learned too soon how to be brave. Lily's world was filled with long nights waiting by the window, listening for the sound of her mother's keys in the lock. She would fall asleep on the couch, clutching her bear, pretending she wasn't afraid of the shadows. Most kids her age worried about schoolwork or friends. Lily worried about whether there would be food in the fridge tomorrow. And yet, she never complained. At school, she smiled through the hunger. At home, she hummed lullabies to herself when the silence grew too loud. She had learned that sometimes, the only way to survive was to act like everything was okay, even when it wasn't. But on that stormy night, when her mother didn't come home at the time she promised, Lily's brave little heart finally cracked. She had waited as long as she could. And then, with her stuffed bear tucked under her arm, she stepped outside into the storm to search. That's how she ended up beneath the street lamp, small, soaked, and trembling, just as James Reynolds, a man with every reason to keep walking, happened to see her. And the choice he makes next will push this story into a place neither of them could have imagined. James's shoes splashed in the gutter as he crossed the street, the storm soaking him to the skin. He didn't care. Every step closer, the weight in his chest grew heavier. This wasn't just a child waiting for her mom. This was a little girl who had been waiting too long. When he reached her, he crouched down, his suit jacket shielding her from the rain as best it could. "Hey, you're freezing," he said softly. "Where's your mom?" Lily's chin trembled. She looked up at him with wide eyes, water dripping from her lashes. "She said she'd be home, but she didn't come. I looked everywhere." She hugged her stuffed bear tighter, as if the little toy could keep her from falling apart. James swallowed hard. He wasn't a man used to comforting children. He was used to boardrooms and contracts, not fragile little voices breaking in the rain. But in that moment, something in him cracked open. He shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around her small shoulders. It swallowed her whole, but it was warm. She blinked at him, surprised, as if she hadn't expected kindness from anyone. "Let's get you out of this storm," James said. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere warm." But Lily shook her head quickly. What if my mom comes back and I'm not here? What if she thinks I left her? Her words hit him harder than the storm ever could. James felt his throat tighten. This little girl was clinging to hope with both hands, even as it slipped away. He looked around, the rain pounding, his car only steps away. His mind raced. Take her with him and risk breaking her fragile trust, or leave her here and risk something far worse. James reached for his phone, his finger hovering over the screen. He was about to make a decision that would change everything. And just as he pressed the call button, a voice cut through the storm from behind him. James spun around, his phone still in his hand. Behind him, a store owner was locking up, his umbrella tilted against the rain. "Sir, is she with you?" the man called out. James shook his head quickly. "No. I just found her." The store owner frowned. "Careful. People get the wrong idea when a businessman's caught out here with a kid that isn't his." The words sliced sharper than the wind. James knew the man wasn't accusing, but it was enough to make him hesitate. He glanced down at Lily, shivering inside his coat, staring at him with absolute trust. For the first time in years, James felt unsure of himself. He tucked the phone back into his pocket. "Don't worry," he said firmly. "I'm not leaving her out here." That was the first turn. A decision. A vow. He led Lily to his car, opening the door carefully so she could climb inside. She hesitated, hugging her bear, before whispering, "Is it okay?" James nodded. "It's okay. You'll be safe." The second turn came as soon as she settled into the seat. He reached into his glove compartment for tissues, handing her one to dry her face. That's when he noticed it. Bruises peeking out from beneath her sleeve, faint but undeniable. His heart stopped. "Lily, who gave you those?" His voice was low, careful. Her eyes darted away, lips pressed tight. She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled the sleeve down and whispered, "Please don't tell anyone. Mom said it'll only make things worse." James sat frozen, the storm hammering the windshield. This wasn't just a lost child in the rain. There was something much darker hidden beneath her silence. And as James started the car, Lily finally lifted her head and said something that would leave him shaken to his core. "I wasn't supposed to tell anyone, but I think my mom is never coming back." The words hung in the air like thunder. "I think my mom is never coming back." James gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles pale against the leather. The storm outside blurred into streaks of water on the windshield, but it wasn't the rain clouding his vision. It was memory. He glanced at Lily, her small frame swallowed in his coat, her eyes brimming with fear and secrets. She reminded him too much of someone he had tried to forget. Himself. Years ago, James had been that child. Sitting alone on a sagging couch in a run-down apartment, waiting for a mother who never came home. His father had walked out long before that, and his mother. Well, the streets had taken her in ways James could never bring himself to speak about. By the time he was Lily's age, he had learned the cold truth. No one was coming to save him. That night was the night James Reynolds had promised himself two things. 1. He would never be powerless again. 2. If he ever found a child standing where he once stood, he wouldn't walk away. Now here she was. Lily. A mirror of his own broken childhood. And the weight of that promise pressed down on him harder than any corporate empire ever had. "Lily," he said softly, his voice breaking despite his effort to stay composed. "You're not alone. Not tonight. Not ever again, if I have anything to say about it." She looked at him, confused but clinging to his words as if they were a lifeline. James's phone buzzed again on the dashboard. Another meeting reminder, another life waiting for him in polished glass towers. He silenced it without looking. For the first time in years, business could wait. Because this wasn't about deals or deadlines. This was about a promise made long ago. And in the next moment, James Reynolds would prove that he wasn't just another stranger passing by. He was the man who had once been Lily, and now he had the power to rewrite her story. The storm had begun to ease, but inside James's car the air was heavier than ever. Lily's small hand clutched the stuffed bear, her eyes darting nervously to the door as if she might need to run again at any moment. James turned toward her, his voice steady now, firm with resolve. You don't have to be afraid anymore. Not tonight. Not while I'm here. She blinked at him, uncertain, as though kindness itself felt foreign. James pulled his phone from the console, not to answer a meeting, not to call an associate, but to dial a number he hadn't used in years. His lawyer. "I need you," he said into the receiver, his tone sharper than steel. "There's a little girl who needs help tonight. And we're not waiting until morning." For the first time, Lily's eyes widened with something other than fear. Hope. He drove her across the city, past gleaming towers and busy streets, until they pulled up outside his own home. A mansion by any measure, high gates, glowing windows, a world away from the rain-soaked street lamp where he'd found her. He parked and opened the door, offering his hand. Lily hesitated. "Is it okay?" James crouched so he was at her level, rain still dripping from his hair. "Lily, everything that's mine is yours tonight. Food, warmth, safety. You'll never wait alone in the dark again." Inside, the warmth hit her instantly. The smell of soup from the kitchen, the soft glow of firelight. For a child who had known nothing but scarcity, it was overwhelming. She clutched her bear tighter, then slowly, for the first time in hours, let out a breath that wasn't shivering. James watched her sink into the sofa, his chest tight with something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. He knew this wasn't just one night. This was the start of a promise kept, the moment he chose to rewrite not only Lily's story but also his own. And in that choice, a life lesson became clear. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can give isn't money, or power, or success. It's showing up for someone who's been left behind. Because one act of courage can change everything. If a little girl standing in the rain could find hope because one man chose to stop, imagine what the next story will awaken in you. And if this story moved you, hit subscribe and join our SoulTwist family, because the next story might be the one that changes everything for you.